The sun blazed overhead as Emily tightened the last bolt on the rusted rail of the yacht. Her hands were raw, covered in calluses and dried paint, but there was a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there for years. The marina was quiet that afternoon, just the gentle slap of waves against hulls and the occasional cry of seagulls circling above. For Emily, this forgotten yacht wasn't just a restoration project, it was her salvation after losing her husband 3 years ago. Emily had been trapped in a cycle of survival, raising her 6-year-old son, Mason, alone, working 2 jobs, and constantly feeling like the world had moved on without her. Then the yacht appeared abandoned at the edge of the harbor, its name barely visible through peeling paint. Serendipity. It was poetic, really. She hadn't meant to fall in love with it, but something about the vessel called to her. No one claimed it, and after months of quiet inquiries and red tape, the marina manager finally allowed her to restore it in exchange for clearing the dock space. Every morning, after dropping Mason off at school, she came to Serendipity. She sanded, scrubbed, hammered, and painted. The engine had been a nightmare, and she had no formal training, just an old repair manual and a stubborn determination. Some of the other dock workers laughed at her, but she ignored them. Piece by piece, the boat began to come back to life. Mason loved it. He called it our pirate ship, and in the evenings, they would sit on the deck and eat peanut butter sandwiches, pretending to chase buried treasure. It was the first time Emily felt like she was building something with her own hands, something just for them. She had no idea that someone had been watching. Miles Bennett stood on the balcony of his luxury waterfront condo. His morning espresso, untouched in his hand, he'd been watching her for weeks now. Not in a creepy way, but with a sort of fascinated curiosity. He owned the yacht, or at least, his company did. It had been left behind when his father died, tied up in legal disputes, forgotten amidst the other assets. He hadn't even remembered it was docked there until a week ago when his assistant brought it up during a conversation about liquidating old holdings. When he first saw her, hair tied up messily, grease streaked across her cheek, deep in concentration. As she adjusted something beneath the helm, he thought she was part of the marina crew, but then he noticed the boy, and the lunches, and the way she moved like she didn't owe the world anything anymore. There was something magnetic about her. She wasn't like the women in his world, polished, performative, calculating. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and yet, he found himself thinking about her more than he cared to admit. That morning, he made a decision. Emily was wiping her brow with the back of her sleeve when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, expecting to see the marina manager, or one of the usual regulars, but instead, saw a man in a tailored navy jacket and dark jeans, with an aura that didn't quite belong to the salt and grime of the harbor. "You're working on Serendipity?" he asked. She straightened, instinctively protective. "Yes, I've got permission. I'm not trespassing." "I didn't say you were," he said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I'm Miles Bennett. My father used to own this boat." Her stomach dropped. "You're the owner," he nodded. "Technically, yes. Though to be honest, I forgot all about it until recently." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. All her work, all her hours, the dreams she built. With Mason, what if he asked her to stop? What if he wanted it back? "I didn't mean to take anything," she said quickly. "The marina said it was abandoned, and I've been watching." He interrupted gently. "Not in a weird way, I swear. But I've seen what you've done. You've brought it back to life." She blinked. "I'm not finished. The interior still needs work. The electrics are a mess. I was just trying to give my son something to believe in." Miles studied her for a moment. Her eyes were tired but fierce, and her hands bore the proof of her effort. He'd never seen anyone fight for something so quietly before. "You're doing more than most people would ever try," he said, "and to be honest, I think my father would have preferred someone like you to inherit this boat than for it to rot as some forgotten asset." She tilted her head, unsure if this was pity or something else. "I don't want to take it away from you," he added, "but I'd like to talk more. Maybe help." "I don't need help," she said too quickly. "I didn't say you did, but maybe we can help each other." The way he said it made her uneasy, but not in a threatening way. More like he saw something in her she didn't even recognize in herself. He gestured toward the boat. "Can I come aboard?" She hesitated for just a second, then stepped aside. Mason arrived later that afternoon, bounding down the dock with his backpack bouncing. "Mom, did you fix the wheel today? Did it work?" Miles turned, surprised by the boy's enthusiasm. Emily's face softened. "Not yet, kiddo, still working on it." Mason spotted Miles. "Who's he?" Miles knelt to the boy's level. "I'm Miles. I used to know this boat a long time ago." Mason nodded, then grabbed his mom's hand. "She's fixing it. It's gonna be our boat." Miles looked up at Emily. "I believe it." That night, Emily sat on the deck after Mason had fallen asleep in the small cabin below. She watched the water ripple under the moonlight, her mind racing. This wasn't just about a boat anymore. Something had shifted. A man like Miles didn't just show up out of nowhere. She didn't know what he wanted or what his sudden interest meant, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't letting go of Serendipity. The morning breeze carried a trace of salt as Emily stepped onto the deck, coffee in hand. She glanced toward the marina entrance without meaning to. She had spent the night trying to convince herself that Miles wouldn't come back, that whatever passing interest he had in the yacht or in her would blow over. But some part of her hoped he would return. He did, just after 9. He showed up again, wearing jeans, this time a plain white shirt, and a hesitant smile. There was something oddly disarming about him. Despite his reputation as a ruthless investor, she looked him up the night before. He carried himself more like someone trying to blend in than take control. "I brought breakfast," he said, holding up a brown paper bag and 2 iced coffees. "Peace offering." She folded her arms. "You trying to bribe me with pastries now?" He grinned. "Depends. Do you like almond croissants?" She gave a reluctant laugh. "I'll think about it." They sat in the shade of the sailcloth canopy she'd rigged up last week. He asked her about the repairs, the structure, the wiring, the labor. She told him honestly. She didn't hold back the difficulties, the cost. The nights, she cried herself to sleep, wondering if she was out of her mind for even trying. She didn't know why she was telling him so much. Maybe it was because he actually listened. At one point, he gently asked, "Why this yacht?" She looked down at her hands. "Because it was broken, like me. And I thought maybe, if I could fix something that seemed impossible, I'd believe I could fix my life too." He was silent for a moment. "You know," he said, "most people would have walked away, sold it for scrap, or let it rot. What you've done, it's rare." Emily looked up. "Why are you really here, Miles?" He met her eyes. "I think I was looking for something, too. I just didn't know it until I saw you." That was the first moment she felt her heart stutter. Not because of the words, but because he said them without any pretense. As if he didn't realize how vulnerable they were. Days turned into weeks. Miles kept coming back. Sometimes he brought tools, sometimes food, sometimes nothing at all, just his presence, which slowly became familiar. He helped her rewire the cabin lights even though he clearly had no idea what he was doing. He let Mason teach him how to tie basic knots, and listened with sincere interest when the boy explained how they were going to sail around the world one day. Emily didn't realize how much space he had begun to occupy in her world until he missed a day. Then another. She didn't want to care. She didn't want to admit she noticed his absence. That she found herself staring toward the marina gate, waiting for him to reappear. But it hurt more than she expected. On the 3rd day, she found a man in a blazer waiting at the dock with a briefcase. He called her by name. "Ms. Cotter, I'm Matthew Lorne. I'm with Bennett Holdings." Her stomach tightened. "I've been asked to deliver this." He handed her a sealed envelope. "It's regarding the ownership of the vessel." As she opened it slowly, her eyes skimmed the words, legal phrases, property transfers, signatures. It was a deed, officially transferring full ownership of Serendipity to her. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Mr. Bennett wanted to make sure there was no confusion. The yacht is yours. Completely. Why didn't he come himself?" "I'm not at liberty to say." Emily stared at the papers in her hands, her heart thudding like a drum. It was what she wanted, wasn't it? Ownership. Certainty. She had fought for this yacht, poured her soul into it, but now it felt empty. She didn't see Miles for another 5 days. When he finally returned, he looked different, tired, guarded. He found her on the deck, sitting cross-legged in the middle of scattered paint cans and coiled rope. "You signed the papers," he said. "I did." He nodded. "Good." She stood, eyes locked on his. "Why did you do it, Miles? Why give it to me like that, through a lawyer? Why disappear?" He hesitated. "Because I thought it was the right thing." "That's not an answer." "I didn't want you to feel like you owed me something. I never did." "I know, but I think I started to want you to too, and that scared me." The rawness in his voice chipped away at her anger. Still, she needed clarity. "Is this just guilt? Some rich man's redemption project?" He stepped closer. "No, it's not guilt. It's admiration. Maybe even." He stopped, unsure. "I think about you more than I should. You and Mason. That boat, this whole strange, beautiful mess. I wanted to give you freedom, not take anything away from you." She folded her arms, not out of defense, but confusion. "Then why do I feel like you already took something?" He exhaled. "Because I left, and I shouldn't have." The silence hung between them like a sail catching wind. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. "I don't need saving, Miles. I know. That's why I keep coming back." She looked at him, really looked. Past the wealth, the name, the polished reputation. She saw the man who had learned to tie knots from her son, who sat for hours painting rusted railings, who brought almond croissants and asked for nothing in return. "I don't know what this is," she said softly. "Neither do the first, but I'd like to find out." Together she didn't respond right away. Instead, she picked up the paintbrush and held it out to him. "Then grab a brush." He smiled, took the brush, and knelt beside her. The yacht gleamed under the late afternoon sun. It was nearly finished, now inside and out. But something told Emily the real journey was just beginning. The sky was painted in soft pink and gold as Emily adjusted the sail and stood quietly on the deck of Serendipity. 2 months had passed since Miles officially gave her the yacht. Since then, everything had changed, gently but deeply. Each day felt like new light was breaking into her life, teaching her how to breathe again. Miles kept coming, sometimes with tools, sometimes just with coffee. But the most valuable thing he brought was himself. He never tried to take over. He never treated her like someone who needed rescuing. He simply showed up, helped when asked, and let her lead. Mason adored him too. Their bond had grown fast, like they had known each other far longer than just a few months. Emily found herself opening up more each day, though part of her heart still braced for something to go wrong. One afternoon, Miles invited her to dinner. At first, she resisted. "I'm not a billionaire's date," she had joked. But when Mason said, "Mom, Cap'n Miles is nice," something softened in her. The dinner wasn't fancy, just grilled fish at a dockside cafe and the sea playing its eternal music nearby. But when Miles looked into her eyes and said, "You're more valuable than this yacht, Emily," something inside her paused. The world got a little quieter, a little safer. The next day, Miles didn't show up. No message, no call. She waited, told herself he was probably busy. Day 2 came, then day 3. Still nothing. Mason asked, "Where's Cap'n Miles?" "Mom." Emily didn't answer. She just kissed his forehead and tucked him into bed early. That night, on the 4th day, she went to the marina office where Miles sometimes worked out of a spare room. It was locked. A clerk told her he left town for urgent meetings. Back on Serendipity, the air felt heavier. Mason sat quietly, tracing his finger along the edge of his toy compass. "He'll come back, right, Mom?" he asked. She forced a smile and nodded. But deep inside, the old fear came creeping back, the fear of being left behind again. 2 days later, Miles returned. He looked tired, his eyes a little duller than before. But when he stepped onto the deck and saw how much work she had done, in his absence, new cushions, polished deck, fresh paint, he stopped in silence. "I'm sorry," he said. Emily didn't speak, just waited. There was a board meeting crisis. "I had to leave without notice, but I should have called. I should have said something. You think a message would have made a difference?" Her voice wasn't angry, just distant. "You vanished, Miles, just like that." "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared that I was getting too close. That maybe you and Mason were starting to need me. And what if I couldn't live up to that?" Emily looked at him for a long moment. "I don't need you to be perfect. I don't even need you to stay forever. But if you walk away without saying goodbye, it tells me you never really meant to stay." He nodded slowly. "I meant to. I still do." That night, for the first time, Miles read Mason a bedtime story, a sea tale about a boy and his mother who fix a broken ship and sail toward a new world. The boy fell asleep halfway through, and Emily just watched from the cabin door. Later, she joined Miles on the deck. The stars shimmered above, and the water moved like silk beneath the boat. "I used to think love meant losing yourself," she said softly. "Now I wonder if it's just finding someone who helps you be more of who you are." He looked at her. "You've made me more human than I've been in years." The next morning, Miles brought an idea. "Let's take her out again," he said. "You, me, and Mason. 3-day sail. Nothing fancy. Just us." Emily raised an eyebrow. "I'm the captain." He laughed. "I've always been your crew." The sail was magical. Day 1 brought clear skies and calm seas. Day 2 gave them soft rain that drummed on the roof like music. Day 3 led them to a quiet port town where the people were simple and the sea shimmered like silver. That night, anchored just off the shore, with Mason asleep and only the soft creak of the yacht around them, Miles took her hand. His touch was warm but unsure. "I want to ask you something," he said. She looked at him. "I know this isn't a proposal. It's not about rings or promises. But I want to know if I can be part of the next chapter for you and Mason. If there's space for me in the life you're building." Her heart paused for a second. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't wrapped in luxury. It was just him, honest, uncertain, vulnerable. She smiled. "You already are. They're floating between water and stars." The broken yacht Emily had stitched back together with her bare hands became the place where her real journey began, not just with wind and waves, but with love, trust, and something more permanent than anchors.